Hi, my name is Bob Grunier, and I'm a volunteer with the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. So welcome this 9th March 2025 for Pyramid Control. Can everybody hear me out there in internet land? Are we good to go? Hi, Martin Kemp. Hi, Amika Avila. Hi, Barbara Sampson. Hi, Corky Goss. DIY Projects with Couchauxis. Hello there, Paul. Narek Kesumyan. Hi, Misunderstood. Hi, Joe Valachi and Tammy. Hi, Artifact is in the house. Creating Awareness, Bo Sinclair, Martin Kemp. We have a very good quorum here. Hi, Green Hiker. Nick Knock, wonderful to have you here. Now I'm gonna switch to my camera hopefully, and hopefully the audio is gonna follow through. But I'm gonna be a bit blurred because I'm a little bit behind today. I'm blurred. There we go. Let's try and focus in. There we go. Not that you really want to see that. Okay, so good evening, good morning, wherever you are. We have people from all over. Hi, a Grand Obra. Great to have you here, particularly. And Tutamunga, Josh S., Leon Goulden, wonderful. Okay, I'm not even set up with my switcher here either. Oh dear. It's going to be a bit of a mess, this one, I'm sorry, but I just kind of got to get something through to you as soon as possible. And this is it. I'm a little bit exhausted from the traveling to do this. It was a quick turnaround. I'm going to try this multi-view windowed and drag that down there and over there. And I'm going to switch. There we go. So, not very long ago, one Paul LeMay, a researcher and author, emailed me to say, I would like to ask if you would be willing to come in the near future to do some experiments within a pyramid which is located in Kelowna in British Columbia, in the west side of Canada. And it's funny because I'd been there a little bit before Christmas, visiting Carmen Miller and also Paul Harris to look at some equipment and to do some experiments. And we did a Hutchison replication. We looked at the Mueller motor. We looked at Met glass and some really interesting stuff. And Carmen Miller gave me this wonderful, wonderful book by Whittaker, an original Whittaker history of the theories of ether and electricity from 1910. And she also gave me this, a wonderful original copy of Infinite Energy Charge Clusters with Ken Shoulders. So thank you to Carmen for that. However, there was no time for pleasantries this time. It was really just fly in, do work and leave, although that wasn't all that happened. But there were some very other interesting people there, and I will add their names into the blog when we're done here tonight. But really the opportunity here, and Carmen had mentioned this, and Paul had mentioned this when I was over last time. There's the pyramid, and it's completely separate. This guy, Paul LeMay, reached out to me and said, "Is there any possibility?" I said, "No, I'm too tied up, got lots to do, so on." And then I saw that all of the planets were aligning, and then I thought, I have no choice because it's not going to happen again until 2040. So I kind of had to go. And there were these other research teams going to be there, and Stephen Sipes, who owns the vineyard, who you're going to see in a minute, he was making time in order to assist and facilitate these experiments. And I thought, well, I can't do this by myself, but Paul Harris, who I did the research and into the John Hutchison attempt, and also he came over and did a conference here with me in the Czech Republic last year. He lives just up the road, and so I reached out to him. I said, are you going to be free Friday, Saturday, Sunday? A little over a week ago, and well, actually a week ago. And he said, actually, it just so happens I am. And so very graciously, he agreed to be a part of the team. And thankfully that happened because he was able to bring down some big speakers, which I wanted to do some sound studies with, and some other equipment, and assist me in this process. So looking at this place, it is just up the road from Kelowna. Here, this is Kelowna, and this is the Okanagan here in Canada. It's very, very picturesque. I've not seen it in anything other than autumn and winter, but I imagine it looks even more beautiful when all the trees are in leaf. But it has a rugged beauty. There's a lot of skyscrapers going up downtown in Kelowna. I think it was Stephen Sipes said when he first arrived, there was basically nothing there. And now there's quite a lot. So here is the actual pyramid itself. And I'll play this. Hopefully you can hear this when I play it. If it's going to play. This is the Summerhill Winery. This is the Summerhill Pyramid Winery's pyramid. And it is about a 7.5% scale. 7.51. Yes, it has the right angle, 51.84. There we go. And you know, when you're outside, it doesn't look actually that big. But the reality is, inside, it feels a lot bigger. It's got an escape hatch here. And the winery, it's really rather fine. Okay, so you can see the view from the pyramid here. Apparently this is the largest organic restaurant in Canada, and the wine here apparently has won international awards, some first place, and I'm not a wine connoisseur, but Stephen Sipes, the owner, is, and this is Stephen himself, with the pyramid in the background. And like I said, it doesn't feel so big when you're on the outside. It's sort of like standing looking up at a branch and then standing on the branch looking back down. It feels bigger inside than it does on the outside, and actually it is a little bit bigger, and I'll give an explanation as for why. But it also has this area to allow stuff to be brought into the pyramid, and to the left of that it has an entranceway which you go up into the pyramid. And honestly, it really shocked me because there are aspects in this pyramid that I don't know the full story behind how it was produced, but this is known. It's in a very dry environment, which is a bit like the place that the main pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Giza is. It's a desert-like environment. It has a very low rainfall, often hot at night, hot in the day and cold at night during the summer. So it has some similarities there. And as you will see on Google Maps, you'll see that this pyramid is aligned to true north. They use 3 different methods, and because it's scale and geometrically accurate, it means it's a perfect candidate for doing these experiments. Why did he build the pyramid? He built the pyramid to age his wines, And if you know about, not that he did, but if you know about the work of Simon Schnoll, a book in 2012, he talks about the fact that there is a common cosmophysical factor that basically changes all random processes, or influences all random processes. And aging and cell division and beta decay, all these things are part of these kind of different things that can be affected by this common cosmophysical factor. And if you remember the presentation that I translated of Alexander Shishkin from 2018, he speculates that this is this flux of these clusters of relic neutrinos. And I am minded to agree with him. Now, the absolute shocking thing for me is that this has a volume underground, which is here, where he brings the wine crates in, and there is a lift that allows you to do some aging in the actual main volume of the pyramid, but also in the underground area. And I'll clarify this later, but the vortex that is produced, and if you can recall the kind of vortex you see on the water in the 60s NOAA image that I've referred to a number of times, and I'll show it again for reference in a minute. Based on the geometry of this, as far as I can work out, he literally has the wine arranged in the perfect place to maximize the flux of chi, the whatever it is that's going through. Mind-boggling. I don't know whether he was able to farsight this or get a download, or maybe the people that were working with him. But he didn't stop at just getting this in the right location and orientation. He also has clad the building in Aswan radioactive granite. And I have a little sample of it here, and we'll talk about a bit about that later. Here it is, red granite, actually from Aswan. And also, the limestone is also from Aswan. So he actually went to an extreme level of, attempts to make an accurate construction here. So absolutely amazing. It was a hard couple of days. I had 23 and a half hours door-to-door in and 26 and a half hours door-to-door out. I just got over my jet lag when I was ready to leave, and I've just had to get over the jet lag this week, and I'm absolutely exhausted. But I would not miss this for the world. I would not miss this opportunity, because as you'll see, what we've done is we put in a control, and it turns out when I did the calculations that basically this is as small as you could possibly make a pyramid to do an experiment. And the fact that it's already made, it's properly aligned to the cardinal points, and it has the right geometry. And even a simple thing like in the very center of the pyramid, there is a water drain. Thank you, Vanilla Isis, for that donation. Very kind of you. There is a drain, and the drain goes down, and the drain goes all the way down to what would be the subterranean chamber. And we can actually put a concentric tube in there and fill it up with water. We can actually do a full attempted replication of the magnetohydrodynamics in this. And so it's mind-boggling. It's just mind-boggling that there is this, that because someone saw some videos that I did a number of years ago, they thought it was a good idea to get me involved. They didn't really know what I was going to do, and it's just a gift. And so I have to thank Stephen Sykes for having the courage to first build this thing for his own reasons, and apparently it seems to work. And secondly, to allow me to come in and attempt the experiment. And I, like I say, I'm not a wine connoisseur. I am not a wine connoisseur. But when in Rome, I was encouraged by Stephen here, looking very jolly, to try some of his wine. And I have to say, and I'm not making this up, it's not a puff piece. This, I think, is the best red wine I've ever had. It's called the Spadeford Toad Syrah. I don't know what year it is, but it was really good. This is Paul here. And so whatever he's doing, whether it's the pyramid or whether it's grapes or whether it's how he does things, it's all organic. There's no chemicals involved. I don't know. Maybe there's always been chemicals in the cheap wine that I've ever been able to have. But yeah, this was absolutely spectacular. Really, really good. Okay, so when it came to doing some analysis, the first up was to see if the red granite was active. Now, we do know there are 3 or 4 types of red granite, and maybe I'll pull up the data that I've previously shown in other presentations from the Aswan quarry or some of the quarries in that region. But I wanted to see if the particular granite that he had sourced from there actually was a little bit radioactive. And so I did a test with my Radioscan here, this little device here, Radioscan 701 here, this little device here, and this is on the grass outside, and you can see it's just sitting here on the grass, and we got counts of in an hour and 11 minutes with a plus or 5% margin of 26.6 here, 26.6. Now, just in the person's entrance to the base of the pyramid, he has this solid block of Aswan red granite. And I placed this on top for a similar amount of time, 1 hour and 5 minutes and 32 seconds sampling. And at this point, it had reached a plus or minus 4%, so comparable error bars on that of 50.7. So 26.6 to 50.7, nearly 100% higher activity than background. Now, we have some blocks here that came off the pyramid, and we may be able to do the active version of the experiment that is currently running with some of this granite, or what we have considered doing is getting some local thorium or sourcing some more Kerala sand, a combination of those, and creating the activating platform that needs to go in a very specific place. Now, on the basis that the pyramid is currently producing a flux, then we put a control in. But before we get there, I want to show you a map of the location, talk about how it's oriented and why that matters. Okay, so here is another image of the local environs here. And I also did some analysis on beta. That wasn't conclusive. And using this little device, it would appear there is a doubling of the gamma on that red granite, according to tests done by Paul. However, I'm not seeing it here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to strap the red granite sample that I have here to this, and I will leave it attached to for a couple of months, accumulating, to see if we can see any specific energies that might come from uranium decay products or the decay products of thorium, which are known to be both in that granite. So this was the beta test, and it was not very conclusive.
Hi, my name is Bob Greenyer, and I'm a volunteer at the
and so you can
Memorial
see
Project.
how
I'm here
I'm
at the Summerhill Winery,
arranging it here. So this is this door
at the entrance here. There is
that
a
enables
block of
you to load the wine in, and this is the door up
Aswan
into the pyramid
red
for pedestrians.
granite. And we are doing an analysis of beta currently here, which you can see.
So this was,
and it's got 18.4 counts currently, plus or minus 6%. We can do that measurement for a little while, and then we're going to put it over on the grass and do a control.
Okay, so I'm going to pull up the Googly Mapsies here in a second, and we will look at that. So it's called the Summerhill Pyramid Winery, so you can look at it yourself if you wish. Okay, so we're going to go in here. So you can see the various vineyards, lots of vineyards, lots of vineyards. And he also has other contributing vineyards that supply their grapes. And you can see the Okanagan here. It's a really rather large water system here. So here is the Pyramid Winery, and if we go in, this is the pyramid itself. Unfortunately, it's a little off center, so I have asked a local videographer to attempt to take a drone shot looking directly down. So the video you saw earlier of me was coming in from the road, the entrance to the winery here. And I came in and I walked around on the gravel at the top level here. Okay, so what are we looking at here? This is the north face of the Summerhill Pyramid Winery's pyramid. This is the east face. This is the south face. And this is the west face. Okay, so essentially, I mean, we're in Google Maps here, so you can see that this would be north, approximately. And so the planet rotates east, okay? So if we're starting, if we were sort of stationary above this, this would be rotating this way. This is the planet rotating, the planet is rotating, the planet is rotating like this, okay? And it means that our ascending passage will be in the real pyramid 7 meters towards the east and somewhere in here towards the east. Okay, and that is the yang. So the yang is disassembling matter, and it's going into the flux of the ether as the planet is rotating like this. Okay, so and it has its vortex cone coming out like that. And so it's sucking the stuff in. It will go round like this into the south west, just a little bit into the yin. And this means our vortex is going around this way, which means that the chi flux is going to come in here and round past the stuff in the subterranean area, which is where he basically, in the subterranean area, it's here, underground. And he has the wine in these quadrants. So to me, it's mind-boggling the way this is arranged. But anyway, the flux is coming in here, just like you see in that tornado, water spout rather, and round here, and round here, and round here, and round here, and boom, out of the top of the pyramid. And in fact, someone many moons ago actually took a picture, and when they developed their picture, it was a nighttime picture. On this cup, you can see there was a some kind of arc coming out of the top, and it was coming out, not going in. So during the eclipse towards the end of the month, Paul is going to go back again and see if this can be also observed. That's the pyramid on this cup. Okay. So that is the orientation, and in my view, how it's going through the flux of ether. I'll bring that down there. So what I did was I took out Lightwave, my trusty 3D application that I use, and I mapped on a genuine overhead shot of a pyramid. I will try and include all the references in the blog, and we end up with something like this. Okay, and The reason it looks bigger internally than it does externally is that when you're standing internally, he has a dropped floor. Okay, there is a dropped floor here. And the way he actually did the model is he made a octahedron, so a pyramid in the ground, and there is a subterranean area here. There is a floor thickness, I don't know the floor thickness, and then 0.558 drop down here. And he has wooden beams that support the outside that are about this much of a depth in. So maybe that's not clear. So I will just try and make it a little bit clearer by bringing them both into view like this wireframe. There you go. So hopefully you can see that there is a drop, and the floor level when you are inside the pyramid is down here. For basis of calculation in all my work, I took the actual geometry of the pyramid, and you can see that overlaid when I put in the layers. Where's my layers? Where's it gone? It's over there. So this is the more accurate pyramid from Wikipedia. And when we look at this, in fact, I'll put it in the background there. You can see every aspect of the Great Pyramid is captured within this structure. And the entire subterranean level is as well. And as I said earlier, he has a drain that goes from the center of this floor all the way down and into the ground, which is somewhere below here. So what it means is we can actually insert a pipe in concentric to that drain, and we will be able to put some water in there, and we'll be able to potentially see the whole thing in operation. Okay, now I want to put over the sacred geometry, and this is going to be very important here because you can see that everything is correctly captured within the available walkabout interaction space. So the vortex will, because it's only a 2 Tor on the n level vortex on the n-1 structures, it will fan out a little bit as it goes down here. And so the wine effectively is, this is the north, so the wine is down here, so the vortex will be coming in here. Okay. Things that you may not have realized before, and this is more accurate than the other image that I've been using in the past. If I put in the non-radiating boundary here, you'll see that the non-radiating boundary here comes down to where you have your granite blocks. We've talked about that before. The grotto here is kind of a roundabout the interaction between these two parts of the structure. Very, very interestingly, the well, as it's called, penetrates here, but it comes on the outside of this part. And this circle is where we see in the tungsten the carbon deposited here, not over here, because the torsion is going round in one way. Okay. And if I overlay the n-1 Tor, in this instance, it is still over to one side, but the disruption area is right in line with the disruption area, the circle that we defined from various experiments. Moreover, if we go up to here, we have, as usual, the chi-rho is on the center of the great step here. In fact, it's slightly off. It's a very, very small amount off. It should be just a little bit down here on the center line there. I don't know whether in this drawing, this is the thickness of the construction lines, or this is the actual line. If that's the line, it doesn't really make that much difference to what we've done in terms of placing the object of interest in situ. Okay. The other things that are very interesting is that of the apple, this channel that comes out of the Queen's Chamber kind of area, it's just inside this part of the apple, and this one is just inside this part of the apple. Thank you very much, Gary Johnson, for that kind donation. This, and I can't remember, but maybe someone can clarify, this particular one here has a thicker shaft which goes down and stops exactly at the outer part of the apple. I don't know if this is as it is. Is this where this funny door is, where they found, you know, some metal plates? I don't know, but this is what they've got drawn on here with this slightly larger structure. But I mean, we're talking very, very small distances between this part of the outside of the apple and what this structure is here. Okay. Now, if we come out to here, for the first time, you can see how the spheres actually penetrate through the Great Pyramid. So your pyramidion, your cap on the top of the pyramid would be on here. The pyramidion is outside of the non-radiating boundary. Okay. Moreover, this is a thing that they dug into, and we're talking about the Great Pyramid of Giza here. This is the bit that they dug in from the other side. The actual north side entrance is here. You can see it's a different shape, and you've got the staircase going up for the pedestrians to go in the Great Pyramid. You can see that the main non-radiating boundary, and bearing in mind the actual fuzzy area is quite a bit of a distance out from this, but certainly coming in here you'll be very, very safe. Okay, so thank you very much, Tartan Beardy. That's really generous. Thank you for that £20 donation. Okay, so if I come back out of here, you can see how this all lines up. Now, sometimes you just have to do the work, and sometimes you find things that just utterly blow your mind. And I'm just going to go through the basis for why I think that the most interesting place in the Great Pyramid is the so-called sarcophagus in the King's Chamber. And for that, we actually need to look at data from hard experiments that we've done in the past. And so I'm going to just pull up a couple here. So what I was talking about earlier about things spinning around, the torsion that comes out of these structures, this is from the late Neil Crichton Gould's Lion track in his diamond nickel deuterium reactor. And this is in copper oxide, known to produce toroidal moments, or predicted rather. There's a spherical piece of material disappeared from here, and this is become fluidized. This is copper oxide. It's become fluidized, and it's twisted over this way. In this case, this is a Mars gas on tungsten. This experiment lasted about 10 seconds, and you've got the vortex and the anti-vortex, and that is producing a torsion similar to this, but it's going over here, and you can see this is our disruption area. This is our disruption area here, and it has this wavy line up here, and this, in this circle here, is this carbon film. It's like a diamond film on here. Elements synthesized here and here, the type of elements you get in your body. So, like I say, this is on one side, and this is the side that the vortex is pulling the material in. Okay, so there's that, and then this is really rather important. So we've got the same here. We've got the yin yang, of course, but this is the image, and I'm going to have to go into this a little bit closer. So we're going to pull this up so I can actually zoom in to the structure here. And we've shown this before, but the important point that I want to go into here is the event horizons. There's several event horizons. You get an event horizon on here, which we'll show in other examples, where the silicon dioxide is cut off at that boundary layer. Then you have the golden ratio line and the Vesica Pisces, and it comes from the golden ratio line into the vortex here. This is the yang. The matter is being torn apart at that point. You've got boron crystals there, oxygen taken from the aluminium. And over here, it comes into the bottom here, and the heavier element goes out and it spreads out into this area here. Okay? This is a bar spiral galaxy, and this is the yin. So it's condensing matter. There's basically a pseudo black hole in here, and that is why it's ripped matter away from this area around here, and it seems to throw it in this direction. And this is the newly synthesized matter, and we had some silver here, and we also had some calcium. Calcium being not all isotopes, but some isotopes of calcium are aluminium plus oxygen. So the hypothesis is that, at least in the case of the calcium, oxygen is ripped from the aluminium here, leaving boron behind and no calcium, comes through the phallico-soliton into the yin, that then causes fusion, or rather production of heavier elements, and they spread out over in this area here. Now, it's not the only example of this kind of behavior in exactly this form. Let me see another one. That's not the best example for that. So in the Griffin-Brock electrode here, I believe that this is the yang on this side, this is the yin. And as we go down, we can see these wonderful magneto-hydrodynamic effects that are exactly and precisely in the correct placement for the magneto-hydrodynamics. So you can see how the vortex flux and the counter vortex flux here are pointing into these respective structures. But the same kind of thing is going on, where here is our Tor on our sub-Tor level, and material is coming in here and it's ending up over here. Okay, there is damage at this point. So if I go up a bit, I leave my mouse pointer in the same place. You see, this is damaged here. Okay, and it's almost pulled away in exactly the same place as it was pulled away in the ultrasound experiment. So one is a Tesla high frequency, high voltage driven plasma reactor. The other one is ultrasound in water. And you can see here, it's just in from this edge, there's this focal point of whatever's going on here. And I believe this is where the heavier elements will be moved to. And you can see down here, these incredible lines that just come into the perfect position here, and they stop on these points. So there really are very discrete areas in this process. Okay. So there's that one, but then there is another very important one, which I will pull up now. And that is this one, which I'm going to show you when I go full screen here. So my thinking is that the reason these bubbles form here and get pulled in here is there is an intense flux of chi, and it's flowing in this direction. So, you know, according to Chi Rho, Chi is the life force and Rho is torsion, density flow with torsion. Okay, and that is exactly what this is. And so you have an intense density at where the tornado comes in at the point of focus here, and it over-energizes the water in this place and causes it to turn to gas of some kind, and it gets pulled in and becomes part of the overall structure. In this case, the chi is coming in and it's over-exciting the tungsten at this point, and it's causing it to disassemble, and this is at least some carbon, and the atoms and the chi are pulled into the overall structure. And I believe it comes in like an Ohm wave. It comes in up onto this one first, but it's like, because it's you're seeing the inside of the outside of the vortex. So there's a vortex coming in here, and there's an inside of that vortex as well, and that's pulling this material in here. Now, when we look at the cardioid infarction sample and its incredible arrangement here, the two things that really stand out is, and this is going to be very, very important. You have no effect, 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 no effect. Same out here, no effect, no effect. But inside this black line, you have a start of a curve. It starts to like a fillet. When you're building 3D objects, you've got a fillet going on in here. And this, I think I'm a little bit hot on the audio. I'm going to pull that down there. This is starting to affect, and then there's a dome here. Okay, on the this is the yang side, and matter is being pulled from the other side of the sample, and it's being put through a wormhole, comes down at here, and because the yin side has a bit of a black hole, material is sucked into it, and then it goes through this, punches a hole through here, and actually deposits all of this material down here, and it again flows over to here. It flows towards this part area. Okay, the same kind of thing is going on. It's flowing over. You can see a little area here. Okay. Now, when we look at this lower part, and remember it's fractal, so the subtors will have these same triangular structures where they interact with the tor at the level, fractal level above. When we look into this, and we look into that further, we end up with this hexagonal array of vortices. A hexagonal array of vortices. And I'm going to go out and look at that a little bit tighter here. This is this area here. It's brushed aluminium, sorry, brushed brass over here, and where this interaction area here is in the subterranean level on the pyramid. It's these hexagonal vortices here, which are equivalent to the model of the ether by James Clerk Maxwell from the 1860s. And we've talked about Pietro Capizza. Pietro Capizza showed the behavior of the superfluidity of liquid helium. He won the Nobel Prize for it. I think it was in the 30s that he did it. He got the Nobel Prize in the 70s or something, much later in life, as typically happens. I think there is such a flux of ether that's coming through here. And what happens when you have a superfluid, when you've got a superfluid, okay, and you give it angular momentum, it doesn't produce one vortex like water going down the drain. It produces a series of vortices that produce a hexagonal array. So I think that's exactly what you are seeing here. There is a flux of ether coming through here, right? And it's so intense with such torsion on it that it divides itself into separate vortices. And the vortices themselves are so intense that they are able to disassemble brass, turn it into a flux and pull it up into one side, and then it goes through a wormhole or whatever. In this case, it's disassembling tungsten. So if it's able to disassemble brass over here, and if it's able to disassemble tungsten, I think it can probably turn water into water gas. I think it can turn water into water gas. And so here we go. We've got our vortex here. It's doing a vortex around here. And that is the moment that comes around here. Okay. And so there is an intense flux. And at the center of that, you get so much chi going through that it is already a superfluid, or the ether is a superfluid. It's so dense, this coming through here, that it is able to disrupt materials. And I believe this is partly what goes on in the Hutchison effect, because these are topological monopoles and they are the things that do the Hutchison effect. Okay. Any other examples I want to give of this phenomena? So there's a couple of points I want you to focus on here. One is the fact that there's nothing, a slight effect like a fillet and then a dome. Nothing, and then you don't have an effect. And also there's less of effect down here. And in fact, this is less of effect where this curved part comes around here. This is going to be important. It's going to be important. I've talked about this in past, but I've never really shown it in 3D, but you're going to see it in 3D in a minute. again, here it's butted up against the inside of the D4D torus. But when you come round to this side, this is less affected on this side. Why is that? Why is that? Well, I'm going to show you. Okay. So here is our 3D model. And there's 2 parts to running a test, or 3 parts to running a test that I believe might be able to help us know whether this is actually going to be a fruitful path forward. Okay. And the key areas are the source of hydrogen, which I believe is water that would rise in the well down here, a source of hydrogen, okay? And the activating material, which I believe was Aswan granite, inserted into this keyway here, which I showed in Ode, New Dawn of an Old Age. And then this place here, okay, the sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid. Now, I actually scaled the pyramid 7.51% based on calculations and measurements done by Paul LeMay and Paul Harris. And when I overlaid his pyramid on this one, and then I took the known measurements of the inside and the outside of the sarcophagus here, I was blown away by how accurate it was, because this is the sarcophagus in position. And there's the outside and the inside. So there it is. That is the sarcophagus scaled and in position based on the outer walls being in the same place as the outer walls on the Great Pyramid of Giza. So we're talking fractions of a millimeter with a scale factor of 7.51 to the model that you get off Wikipedia. Very, very, very accurate. Okay? Very, very accurate. Okay? So now, one thing that totally blew my mind when doing this was this. Give me a second. Okay. I'll give the reference for where I got this image, but what you're looking at here is the pyramid ridges. This is the pyramid center line. On the actual pyramid, the Grand Gallery is in the north side and 7 meters centered to the east. Okay? Because it's going in this way, the planet, and so it needs to go into the flux of the ether for the yang side. Okay? Then it goes through, so the yang is basically a peak with a trough, and the yin side is a trough with a peak. So something will go through a flux loop here, come round into here, and then for whatever reason, I believe it's ending up in the king's chamber, and this is what's so mind-boggling about the pyramid, is that the king's chamber has in it the sarcophagus, and the sarcophagus, this wall of the sarcophagus here, this is my photo from the 26th of December 2021, this wall of the sarcophagus is exactly and precisely the center line. That is not an accident, in my view. It's not an accident. Now, I forgot, someone mentioned it in the blog. I captured this image before I knew of this other guy, but anyway, it's here. This is the alpha that you can see here at this point in the sarcophagus. And you can see here, that's the alpha. I do not see the omega. I don't see the omega, just don't see it. I only see the alpha, and that makes sense to me. Now, the other thing that is always been a bit of a mystery is why is this corner of the sarcophagus broken away? Why is this corner sort of broken away? It's also broken away such that it's got a, like, looks like a scallop here, a scallop here, a scallop here, and a big one here. A scallop here, scallop here, scallop here, and big chunk taken out here. Why is this like this? Well, I've speculated in the past, and I think by doing this work for Stephen Sipes with the invite from Paul LeMay, I think we now have a very good answer. And that is, are you ready for it? Are you ready for it? Boom! Can you see it? There's no effect in this area, none, on several different experimental things. But at the point that you start to see disruption, at the point you start to see disruption of the sarcophagus, you start to see that it's inside what I called the black line on the other images. And if you imagine this, the effect gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and it goes more and more into the east, respectively, then you can see that it would cut off possibly this particular corner. The other thing is, we have shown that the alpha is here. So the first part that's really broken off here is here, okay? And this is further into the structure. But back in the structure, we have the alpha at this point. Look how ridiculously precise this is. So I believe matter is reborn. In this case, condensed chi, possibly bound to calcium-48, most probably, and possibly oxygen. And it ends up as a white powder here. And the point of it forming is at the point of the alpha. It might just materialize at this point and start piling up from the point where the alpha is. This is about as close as I think probably they worked out that it only gets produced in this area. So having the sarcophagus this size, it'll collect it all. And we have seen precisely in the Binwen Huang apples that the outside of the apples have this scalloped wave section in which they break material apart. You can even see that on the structures of Griffin Brock. Okay, they are the parts of the influence of the subtors of tors. Okay, so I'm now of the mind, and I'm going to state it categorically here. I do not believe that this is deliberate damage to the sarcophagus. I think this is the electrodynamics. Thank you, Scoggy Hoggins, for that very generous £20. He says, Bob, thanks. If there's a way we can get that CAD file you're using as a background underlay. I'm going to be sharing all of these things. What we're doing now is we're really getting down to the meat and potatoes of what the structure does and how it does it and where it does it. Okay? It's only by doing the work and in view of trying to replicate what potentially the pyramid was doing that we can fully understand what is going on. Okay? So, two aspects. The wall of the center line is here. So if you go back, the wall of the this wall of the sarcophagus is here. Okay. We have shown from multiple experiments that the end point of the influence of synthesized heavier elements is this area. Okay. And in fact, it's a little bit inside, but whatever. If you had the stuff materializing at this point, you would be capturing it. And I believe the alpha is directly pointing to the point of rebirth of matter from condensed chi. But as you go towards this center line, as you go towards the center line, you start getting into, as you can see, you start getting into this point of the magnetohydrodynamic structure where it is able to start destroying material, and it's going into the east but getting stronger. And I think the combination leads to the damage pattern that you see here. This, to me, cannot possibly be coincidence. Now, I've got another boom for you. I've talked about this many times, but having such an accurate drawing, I believe, I might be wrong, but I believe everything just fell into place. You've seen this, the use of this by me before, but now I'm going to show you in context with this model and why I believe that the keyway in the Grand Gallery is exactly in the right place to produce the etheric matter streams and etheric matter clusters out of the hydrogen that comes from the water, that comes from the subterranean well. Okay? So are you ready? 3, 2, 1, boom! This is a 200 million year old ammonite. I've got this in exactly the same position I've had it in for years. It obviously reduces at the phi ratio. Okay. And I started off with the top torr at the radius it should be. And as it comes down, it shrinks. And this is what you see in smoke rings. You actually don't have a proper torus, which is perfect. It actually gets tighter because it's going into a vortex. Okay? And when you look at this, what you end up with is the outside of this structure here is exactly above the keyway. Exactly above the keyway. Which means that this structure is actually a little bit higher and it's smaller when you are looking at the n-1 level. It might be true of other fractal levels. Okay? And if that's true, then if you can imagine the flux going into a condensed and going into a flux beam coming out here, it kind of would miss this. But if this is shrunken in a bit, it might come in and directly beam the stuff that is collected into this area. That might be why that is the area that things collect. It might be why. It might explain what we physically see in experiments. Okay, so let me just show the physical experimental data that will be able to be replicated by 3-year-olds in 7 minutes in ultrasound and by people that can buy commercially and develop drivers for Griffin Brock's shadowgraph tube, Tesla shadowgraph tube. Again, just to show you what I'm talking about here, is that if you look at this, and I've shown this and shared it in incredible detail, it comes round here. It's very, very tight here with the subtor's impressions. But when it comes here, it breaks away from being very tight. It's actually not very tight to the torr. And it comes up here and it throws the material off to here. It throws the material, let's go back to it, throws the material up to here. Okay? That's the black line. From the black line in, you start to disrupt material on the sarcophagus. And here it is. So the black line is where it starts to disrupt. That's the edge of the disruption as it's shown on the 3D model based on the sacred geometry. But the point of the focus is here, a little bit in, which is where I believe the alpha is. Okay, so that is on Griffin Brock's Tesla-inspired shadow graph generating tube. And then we go to the cavitation experiment here. And again, a little bit in from the black line, right? The black line is when it starts to disrupt matter. And that is why I believe we are seeing the damage to the sarcophagus. But the point of focus is around here for the newly synthesized material. And it's coming out of this. And this isn't at this point, it's at this point. It's not at this point, it's at this point. Why? It's at that point because that is where it is doing, where are we? And in fact, I have it here, so I'll do it in 3D. You'll see it here. Let me just pull in the N-1 tool. We'll put that in the background. Now we'll put it there. And we will go and pull in our background. We've got a background in here somewhere. Where is the background? Here's the background. More windows. Images. I need to bring up the display. There we go. Backdrop. And here we go. Ammonites. No? Oh, it's at the wrong place. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. Give me a second. I need to go there. Is that right? No, I am in the right one. Right, we'll load it in. Load backdrop. There we go. So in this case, you can see that I'm going to change this to color wireframe. This is the keyway. The keyway comes up here and it's exactly underneath the golden ratio vortex coming over here. And if we go over here, and I'll put on the sacred geometry as well. The center point won't be here, it'll be somewhere up here, and I think the center point is then focusing the material up there. But here's this part of the vortex here. Overall structure here. This large circle, look at the large circle here, and this golden ratio line. If I go back to the image here, that's the large circle and the golden ratio line. Large circle, golden ratio line. The phi ratio shrinking here means that the material will be born here at this point and spray out in this direction. It is born here at this point right there and it sprays out in this direction. For me, this is utterly, utterly conclusive that the pyramid is a means by which to manipulate matter using ether vortex engineering. Ether, thank you, my love. Hello, Kim is in the house. My darling wife is in the house. The pyramid is an ether vortex solid state engineering tool. In my view, it's almost impossible for it not to be at this point. Okay. So, now here comes the really, really crazy part. I need to get an image up here for a minute. So talk amongst yourselves. I need to find the image first. Where is that? You'll have to bear with me. Too many tabs. Okay. Give me a second. I'm nearly there. Do one equation as well. I've got to put one equation in as well. I will share more images and references and other things and bits and bobs. On the blog later. So that's that one and that one. Okay, and videos. There'll be videos as well. Okay, here we go. This will do. So, Stephen Sipes, the owner of the Summerhill Pyramid Winery, assigned me the wonderful Paige here, who was my assistant and helped with anything that I needed. And I was asked so many questions, and I tend to answer questions when I'm asked them. So I asked to have some time by myself to calculate where the thing needed to be in the pyramid. And yeah, before I go there, I need to actually put in the measurements here for you so that you know what I'm talking about. Give me a second. Sorry about this. Okay. All right, we're there now. Okay. So, what you're looking at there is me spending a long morning calculating where the sarcophagus is going to be, and specifically where the inside volume of the sarcophagus is going to be. And what you can see on the table in front there are 3 400 ASA Ilford black and white films. Why did we get those? Well, we got those to record potentially strange radiation, because we don't have calcium in the pyramid, and so I don't expect to see collection of a white powder in the middle of some free volume of the pyramid. What I'm looking for are the classic charge clusters blowing up and leaving monopole marks on the film. Okay, so I asked Paul Harris to get me some film. He got me one. I said that's not enough, so he got me 2 more. So there's the film, and I'm trying to calculate where in that pyramid we are going to need to put that film. And so I'm going to play you a little video of Paul and I. This is after I did the calculation, and we are assembling the thing that we need to have on the inside of the volume of the pyramid. So it turns out, based on the 7.51% scale pyramid, that from the center line it is 70.8 centimeters to the inside of the sarcophagus volume, and from the base it's 324 centimeters to the inside of the sarcophagus volume. So we have this little thing that my colleague Paul has jerry-rigged up here, and we've got some Ilford HP5 plus 400 and some matching green tape, and we've arranged them in an XYZ wheel within wheel within wheel orthogonal axes, and they will effectively, that basically there, what you're seeing there with that kind of rough height there is almost exactly the
scaled internal volume of the sarcophagus with respect to the Summerhill Pyramid Winery's pyramid.
Boom! Yes, about the size of 3 film rolls is the size of the inside volume of the pyramids at the Summerhill Pyramid Winery's sarcophagus. Yes. And I decided we got 3 films. I'll arrange them in the X orientation, the Z orientation, and the Y orientation in case the flux of the chi, condensed chi, is coming in particular orientations. Absolutely insanely small. Here are the calculations. So the external dimensions, I'll take my of the sarcophagus, are approximately 89.76 by 38.58 by 41.34. All of the mass we have to times by 0.751. That's 7.51%, because the pyramid is 7.51% of the actual Great Pyramid. But the internal dimensions are the ones we're most interested in, and those are the ones that I have to focus the location of in that volume. And it is 77.94 inches, 26.76 inches, and 35.43 inches. And that comes out to 5.853 inches by just over 2 inches, by just over 2.661. And then came, how do we locate these 3 films, which are basically not much smaller than the inside volume of the sarcophagus with respect to the Summerhill Pyramid Winery's pyramid? How do we get these suspended in the correct place? So actually it was Paige that came up with the initial reconciliation idea, and she actually had some dental floss, and Paul had got some a laser rangefinder, and I'd done all the maths from the base of the lowered internal floor and up to the inside, bearing in mind the thickness of the MDF board. And so this was us putting the thing into position here. So this is Paul Harris at the top here, and at this point there's various bits of dental floss acting as plumb lines ultimately, and I will share a video where we managed to, as I call it, inserted the needle into a specific part of the haystack. So yeah, that's that. And so effectively the inside volume of the sarcophagus is, with this wall of the sarcophagus on the center line, exact center line of the Summerhill Pyramid, coming this way, we have our 3 films, and that is going to be there for 90 days. So anyone that wishes to go and see this experiment in situ, it may turn out to be a complete dud, or it may turn out to be one of the most significant experiments done in several thousand years. I don't know. It could be either or neither. I don't know. But if you want to go and see it, I'm sure Stephen Sipes will be welcoming to anyone that would like to go and see it. And once this has been run for around about 90 days, Paul is going to develop the film. Before I receive that film, it'll be personally handed to me, and then I will look at it at 48-bit scanning, 16-bit grayscale, at extremely high resolution scanning, and of course, if I see anything, I will share all of the data, and it'll be on the film so other people could verify what's on the film. It's going to be very small if it's there, but it would be fascinating to see. It'll also be interesting to see whether the XYZ, if there is any marks on there, whether one or the other has more influence. So we can actually potentially Where did you lose me? Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened there. Sometimes happens. Okay. So 1 minute ago. Okay, so basically we have an XYZ film in this position. It will be in that location for 90 days. Anyone wishing to go and see the experiment, make contact with the Summerhill Pyramid Winery. Paul Harris will develop the film, and then it will be handed to me personally, and I will put it under intense analysis with high resolution and high bit depth image scanning, maybe even put it under SEM once that is done. And that will be the 90-day experiment control. And I kind of don't want to see anything there, but I kind of, maybe there will be something there, maybe we won't see anything. But if the wine is actually being affected, I would imagine that then there will actually be some effect in the sample, the test film. After we've done that, at a later point in the year, we will erect what I would call the activator. Now, the scale of this, as you can see, if we had a pyramid any smaller than this, it would basically be impossible to do this experiment. So the stars and the planets genuinely are aligning in this, in that not only are the planets aligning, but anyway, we have a situation where this pyramid was built. I didn't know any of this 5 years ago. I didn't know Paul 5 years ago. Obviously, I didn't know Stephen Sipes. And we're now in a situation where we have a potential test of the theory. It's absolutely a little bit freaky to me that this is all happening. I have to be honest. It's a bit weird. And we're all just going with it. We're just going with the flow, okay? And so what we will then do is take some... Paul's already got some uranite. I've got some Kerala black sand. There is already some red granite there. Ideally, I would try and identify the best, most radioactive granite that is in Aswan. And Stephen uses his contacts there to get a suitable sample of that to fit into the location in the free volume of space here. And if this pyramid was any smaller, we couldn't have done the test with the 3 films, just would be not possible. And it turns out it's almost exactly the right size necessary for doing that. And you can imagine that if you were doing anything any smaller, the actual Grand Gallery itself would be really small. You certainly wouldn't be able to crawl inside it if it was a solid volume. So not only does it have to be at least this scale, it also has to be empty inside. Okay, and as I've said before, in my view, the main part of the structure of the Great Pyramid is mostly there in order to provide support framework for the solid state chi harvesting structures. The source of the hydrogen down in the subterranean layer, the means by which you can get the vortex going. And I actually described this to Stephen and the team there, that Henk Uren did an experiment where you see a ball lightning form on the end of tungsten rod. It's called Tungsten Chop Shop. You can go and look at it. I'll include it into the blog. And basically the ball lightning forms, and that is the kind of structure that we're looking at. And what it does is it eats the wire around to a specific point. And then what happens, the wire continues going around here. On an 180 degrees round the wire, another ball lightning starts to form, and it gets bigger and it gets more energized, it gets bigger and bigger, and then it cuts on the boundary layer. And so I think what the first ball lightning was doing was it was orienting itself to true north. The second ball lightning is being formed because of the first ball lightning going round, and you're getting the antipodium, the opposite structure being formed. And when it gets sufficiently energized, it then cuts the wire. I think you do not, and I've argued this because in part of Henk Uren's experiment, that you do not need to have any of the energizing on the other side. You may not even need it on the mirrored chamber above. But the first experiment will be a single chamber. The second experiment will probably be with the chamber mirrored above. And I think by that time, we'll have a good idea of whether it's working or not. If it starts to produce a large tornado that tears the pyramid apart, we know we've done well. Okay, so what am I talking about here? I will go back to the 3D model, which is here. We are talking about putting, and I'll take the tour out. We're going to be talking about putting the radioactive part in this part here, in this keyway here, in this keyway here. Okay. All right. And so the disassociated water, possibly as hydrogen and oxygen, are coming up here. The hydrogen, which is 2,000 to 4,000 times easier to produce the high energy solitons of relative neutrino clusters, gets formed in here. It's neutral. It then gets put into the vortex. And it then flows around to here and gets thrown out into the sarcophagus. And so we will, for the second part of the test, be creating a structure that will have the radioactive part facing upwards, and then a mirrored structure in the second test that will have the radioactive structure facing downwards. And those would be the two chambers that I believe the pyramid requires. It needs at least this one. Maybe this one is enough to get it going. It probably needs both to make it work. And then that is it. So, has anyone got any questions? Has anyone got any questions? Has the wind hex given you any better insights? Yeah, the wind hex, the fact that it actually works and the fact that it's based on normal tornadoes. I talk about this when you see, and you can go and now see many examples because of these tornado chasers, these weather chasers. When you see a piece of gypsum that's in the midair, it's in midair, right? It's in midair. There's nothing hitting it. It's moving very, very slowly. But it's dustifying. It's just dustifying. And I think as it got, the main part of the core of the tornado went over, it oversaturated the water in the gypsum, in that plasterboard, and it causes it to disintegrate over a period of time. And so, that would be a very good example of the kind of thing that I believe would happen to the water that's in the lower channel. In fact, in this image here, you maybe you can see it. There's a drain under where my mouse is there, and that is the dead center of the pyramid, and that goes all the way down and through and below the disruption zone. So because there's not a lot of water going into this drain, we can put a concentric tube in there, and it will be exactly going down in the place and having the water necessary, I believe, to make this work. So when we do the active run, we will also be putting a tube with water in that drain. Does this have anything to do with Christopher Dunn's ideas? The one thing it has to do with Christopher Dunn's ideas is it produces hydrogen. Okay, and so the outside of the pyramid needs to be sufficiently sealed. Other than that, not really. Oh, and it's an energy generator. It's an energy generator. It will generate energy in a range of different ways. The most interesting is the energy that goes into the clusters that are bound into the white powder. And in my view, the white powder is a material by which you can see through time and across time. for intense remote viewing. It will be a power source because every single energy cluster can be triggered to release 10 to the 11 electrons. So unimaginable. They also may be self-energizing. And the white powder that they are might be the material that was in Ark of the Covenant, for instance. And because it chucks out strange radiation, which are self-similar clusters, it may cohere energy from the vacuum continuously. And when you approach this thing, and like the Philistines did, they looked out into the Ark, they were exposed to strange radiation and coming from these structures, and that would have caused the injuries that killed them. It would have been an incredible flux. And I believe that the way it was built with thin layers of, I think it was, is it acacia wood or whatever? There was some wood and gold and good wood and gold. This is exactly what you need in order to prevent the radiation from coming out. So you'd be able to carry it and you'd be able to use it as a tool. Yeah, I mean, it's doing this work for me really has led me to believe that certain aspects of the Bible are incredibly accurate. And so, yeah, it would have looked like a white powder. And then secondly, because it has all of these toroidal moment bearing clusters in there, that would be the prima materia. And that materia, you could put that with base metals and with temperature and vibration in the form of phonons, thermal vibration and temperature and sound even, you might be able to synthesize various elements from whatever elements you got. Okay? So I'm going to see if there's any other questions. Okay, so if you want to ask a question, start it with the word question so I can highlight it. So Aldomain Anomaly says, wouldn't you also need a place or substrate that the material can be leached from? Yeah, I believe that in the pyramid, it's captured into carbon, calcium and oxygen that's going to be in the pyramid. Okay. I think maybe a variation of the experiment could have a bunch of calcium carbonate on the other side, so that as the flux comes in, the vortex, because we know it captures spin nuclei, but almost all of carbon, oxygen, and calcium is non-spin nuclei. But calcium-43 is spin nuclei. So I've done all this before, but basically, as it comes through, maybe I can find those calculations, because I think I've got them in a directory here that I had up earlier. But you can find them all on the blog. Not there. So yeah, we might be able to put some calcium carbonate on one side of the so-called sarcophagus in our instance, and maybe even generate some white powder. After all, what is calcium sulfate? Doesn't that sound like gypsum? What am I looking for? I'm looking for that. Not there. Maybe here. All right. So here's a better look at the keyway. So this is the Grand Gallery. So I will need to make a scale model of this respective of the Stephen Sipes pyramid at the Summerhill Pyramid Winery. And this grey line here is the groove. That's the grey line there. Here I have the isotopes of that are in calcium carbonate. Maybe I can make that a bit bigger for you guys. So, okay. So limestone is calcium carbonate. So 98.89% is 12C non-spin. So only 1.11% of calcium carbonate carbon is that, but most of the atoms are not carbon. We've only got one atom of carbon, okay? So, you know, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 atoms. So it's only 20% of the atoms are carbon. And then in oxygen, the only spin nuclei is 0.037% of 17 oxygen. So even though that you triple that, and both of these are light nuclei, they're not very big and so forth. But calcium-43, it's still only 1, but it's a heavy, relatively heavy nuclei. So yeah, very, very little of the mass of the pyramid is spin nuclei. But I think it would end up being a combination of calcium and oxygen, because there's also oxygen in the air and it's paramagnetic. Then the last point here is the Aswan granite. So this is a table of radioactivity from different granites. And I did a whole video on this, but this is from Wadi Abu Shay El Atsan, Gabal Shawab, Gabal Homrit El Gab, and Gabal El Sibai. And you can see some of these activities are really rather high. So hopefully it isn't one of the lower ones here, but look at this. This is a pretty high. Look at that, 106 there, average, really high. So this, I think this is the granite we want. Yeah, the granite we want is from the Gabet Honrit El Gergab. That is the money shot. That one there. That's the lots of thorium, lots of uranium. Yes, please. Okay. It says here the worldwide average concentration of 232 thorium and 238 uranium are about 40 becquerels per kilogram, according to this study in 1999. 40 becquerels per kilogram at worldwide average, and we have becquerels for 238, so becquerels for 238 and becquerels for 232 thorium. And we go down here, and so we have in total here about 200. So it's about 5 times the average activity of granite that if we use this one. And that's the one I would like to use. Kevin Andrews said this is funneling. Yes, it's basically funneling and tornadoes. It's cohering a flux of chi. So Aurorian says, baby question, could the pyramid openings produce an exhaust from the pressure in a controlled way? I've argued that yes, that's probably it, particularly for releasing hydrogen. So if we go to the modeler here and I put the stuff in here, I've argued that, maybe I can go here. So if you had a little lever here, when the pyramid is switched off, now you don't want to do this when it's on. You don't want to do this when it's on, because if I put in the non-radiating boundary here, right, you can't go into the ascending passage here because the non-radiating boundary is here. And as we see in ball lightning, the fuzzy area extends out. some distance. Okay, we can show this. I can show this particularly in a keynote experiment. Data, where can I show this? Where can I show this? Maybe here. And is it that one? No, not that one. No, not those ones. Windows. That one maybe. We should be able to precisely show this. Okay, it's here. It's this electrode here, covered with the quartz sheath. The ball lightning, when it collides with the quartz sheath, leads a 6-order structure, a 4-order structure, a multi-order structure. But the non-radiating boundary, and you see this in many examples, but this is probably one of the better ones when it finally comes into shot, if I move my mugshot. Whether it's clear to you or not, the non-radiating boundary is this black bit here, okay? The actual fuzziness extends out from that. I'm going to actually come into this and blow it up. Where is it? It's over here somewhere. Right, and we're going to go to the end frame. There we go, right. Can you see that? So this is our TOR and our sub-TOR making our copper TOR. This copper was taken from the tube. What tube am I referring to? I'm referring to where we make ball lightning like this, and it's in a tube, okay? So this is our ball lightning, okay? And by changing, you see it's disappeared, and then it suddenly switches on when it's got enough clustering. You wait for it, there, boom, ball lightning. We look through the ball lightning and we see, by changing the camera specifics, and we see the tornado coming into the base of the torus, okay? And every now and again it flashes and it detaches from the thing that's feeding it, and that leads us to the exposure mark here. Now over here, this is actually a copper pipe here. This is a copper pipe, that bit there, the dark bit there. And so the ball lightning has extracted some copper, and that's what we're seeing here. And this is the overall kind of apple shape. But this is the non-radiating boundary here. And outside the non-radiating boundary, you can see this fuzzy bit. This fuzzy bit. So when we look at our 3D model, this is our non-radiating boundary. We'll have a fuzzy bit out here. And that is why I have argued that what they showed last year, I think it was last year, maybe it was the year before, that this new channel that they found here, and I don't know whether this is to scale, I'm not sure when this was made, this one, but the fuzzy bit will extend out to here, and they will be able to see that the pyramid isn't fully shut down, because you'll still see some micro ball lightnings moving around in here. And that's danger sign. Now, when that's switched off, when the pyramid switched off, you'll be able to climb along the outside of the pyramid up to these points here, and this point here, and maybe you can pull the plug, right? You can pull the plug here and pull the plug here, and the hydrogen will come out, the oxygen will fill from the bottom, and it's safe to go in the pyramid, okay? It won't kill you because there's oxygen in there, or air, right? Okay, so I imagine the interesting for me thing here is I can't even believe that this is true, but you know, it stops at that point, which is the apple. Okay. These may also be for gas release, but I believe mostly there will be oxygen down here. Now, these two exhaust ports effectively are higher than the highest part of all of the volumes that you can go to in the pyramid. And that would include a second chamber that's here. Okay. So I believe you're right in thinking, and I've said this before, that these are to clear out hydrogen when you know that the thing is switched down, because you stop seeing little micro ball lightnings in the fuzzy zone here. Okay. Okay, question. Does lapis lazuli stone offer anything to it? I don't know. Yeah, often you get to see these what do you call it? The shit rolling bugs. Oh god, I forgot what they're called now. And they're often carved in lapis lazuli, but they're also carved in other things. I don't know. I don't know. I've not really thought about that. Maybe. Thank you for your question, Kevin Andrew. The capstone was granite but was replaced with gold later, and the pyramids were deemed royal palaces only. Well, that's sad. I'd much prefer to use it for what it's capable of. I think most of the pyramids were different functions. I think this was the solid state ether harvester. So, Shefi, question: can you build a permanent platform inside the pyramid to experiment on? Whatever we do, because the pyramid has no metal in it, other than Nassim Haramein suggested putting some copper along the ridges, which is internal, but I asked for that to be disconnected for our experiments because I want the charge clusters to build up in the environment. Do you have a video on drawing the geometry first sword? I will be doing a workshop at this year's Cosmic Summit on how to draw the geometry and also 3D aspects of it. Question about the void above the Grand Gallery. Since there is no entrance, is it perhaps caused by the process of eating affecting the material like seen on the sarcophagus in the King's Chamber? Possibly. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. No, I've not really thought about that. It might just be a resonant structure. It might actually be, if there is, here's one thing that you might consider it to be. If there is a constant flood of material in here being shot up from here, so if I put in the n-1 Tor and it's actually up here, if it's constantly shooting material into here, then you might find that there's a pressure build-up in here, and so this would just be a pressure relief system. It also might be a resonance cavity that might force some collection to go into the sarcophagus. I don't know. I'm just riffing here. But it might actually just be a pressure relief for the chamber. Because you're trying to relieve the pressure of the pyramid all the way up here and give a nice big chamber for the manifestation of this material, and then it's settling into the sarcophagus. I think it's probably mostly a pressure relief system, actually. Mostly. It's to stop the whole thing being crushed. And we do know that, like, there's an event horizon that's the key one here, but there's an event horizon here, and there's an event horizon on this. So it has to deal with those forces as well in the ether. They will have had a reason, for sure. Question, talking of transmutation, did you know gold 196 is just 7 silicon 28? Well, yes, it is, but of course you need a lot of weak interactions to make neutrons. And of course this does weak interactions, doesn't it? Question, if the Great Pyramid is an enclosed structure, wouldn't the Wine Pyramid be to open an area for this process to work? Do you understand my question? As I said, I think the use of calcium carbonate is the perfect element to make a pyramid for at that time of this scale. I will do a video on how I think you can synthesize the blocks of calcium carbonate, which is different from the natron theory, and perfectly doable with technology at the time. I was going to tag it onto the end of this, but it's a whole other video, so I didn't want to pollute the revelations and the reality that we are going ahead with a practical experiment to test the hypothesis in the Summerhill Pyramid Winery. I didn't want to pollute it at this stage. So I don't think it needs to be enclosed, but it does need to be enclosed from a point of view of the hydrogen. And we have discussed that possibly we have an HHO with separated hydrogen at this point, and we inject it in to the zone where we would create the ether structures. So because we don't actually have a sealed thing where hydrogen can build up to a sufficient level, and I believe the hydrogen, if you can look at the structure here, this part of the inner vortex is exactly and precisely above the entranceway into the Queen's Chamber, so-called Queen's Chamber. None of this is coincidence. Literally none of it's coincidence. I'm even looking at it right now, and it's hilarious that the Sothic triangle, which we know is a little bit off, exactly cuts through where the horizontal bit goes up. It's absurd, the levels of preciseness going on here that are reflective of this magnetohydrodynamic structure. It's just absurd. It's just absurd. Yeah. What can I say? So yeah, so the idea is that because Paul has already got some very good understanding and has built many oxyhydrogen generators, that we would have an oxyhydrogen generator here and or here or here, or just to feed. And because it's got a massive vent at the top, it's not really a problem for the pyramid. The hydrogen doesn't need to be large volume, and it'll go straight up the top and be vented. But when it's in this area of the enclosed thing that we will suspend in the volume of the pyramid, it'll be able to create the ether clusters, and the ether clusters are neutral, and so they will start doing what they do irrespective of any fluid movement. So Kevin Andrews said, question. So is the sacred, hold on, I'm clicking the wrong thing. Is the sacred geometry of a pyramid on Earth that creates flux? No. The flux is always around us. All life uses it. If you're living, you got to be manipulating the chi flux. Okay? All this is doing is it's harvesting chi and condensing it into, in my view, a material that can be collected periodically from the generator. And then that material has absurd levels of practical use. It would be a very efficient storage of absurd levels of energy for interstellar travel, in my view, because what the Russians are basically saying is that in their 1992 release, that cold fusion is the same as the technology you would need to go to Alpha Centauri and back by extracting the hidden energy within 1 kilo of iron. Now, if you had 10,000 kilos of water and you extracted all of the hidden energy from that and had it condensed into a very small amount of portable material, which was itself really exceptionally light, you would have the means by which you could create propulsion systems and energy harvesting systems. I think, like I say, I think these structures would probably harvest energy themselves anyway, enabling propulsion. I mean, I think it would literally be the key to so many technologies. Yeah, it's all light. Yes, it is, Liam, but it's a lot of light trapped in a semi-stable, quasi-stable form, which can then be utilized. So, like I say, the most important part in this overall structure is the Chi-Rho of Chi-Rho. This little bit here. Randy Leahy says, do you draw any connection between the Great Pyramid and those super precise vases found all around the areas? I think the super precise vases are a reflection of the skills of mathematics and precision that the pyramid, this specific pyramid, was built by. I think whoever built this specific pyramid understood how to manipulate matter. And what I have argued, and is something that I mentioned before, but have specifically said today, is that because of this structure's position in the yin structure, the cohering force, the female force, it explains the alpha that we have here, this alpha here. One, that's where the new matter is formed. But here we can see very precisely the start of the destruction. The start of the destruction of the sarcophagus, which is in waves, just as we have seen in Benjamin Huang's interaction with material, just as we saw on the electrode of Griffin Brock. And we know that as we move in from this edge, it's like a fillet. The intensity gets stronger, okay? So when you do the fillet and you combine it with this and the fact that it is, anyway, I believe that that is something to do with what's going on here. And at this point in the structure, it's just not capable of withstanding the chi flux that's coming through at this point. But I would imagine that this damage would happen over a very, very long period of time. I mean, granite is largely made of silicon dioxide. And of course, silicon dioxide, we know from various experiments, including the work of Ken Shoulders and the work of ourselves with Neil Crichton Gold, that it can disrupt and tear apart silicon dioxide. Okay, the process can turn sheets of glass into very fine powder. Yeah, I know granite is made of several different things, but most of rock is made of aluminium, silicon, oxygen, magnesium, iron, calcium, these kind of things. But the majority of the Earth's crust is silicon and oxygen. The builders strike me as people with intense practicality. I agree. So Ken Pratt says, question. So the n-1 toms do not rotate around their respective centers. No, they don't rotate. This is what I've said, and we knew that from the beginning in the Hutchison effect sample, because it just eats itself into the aluminium, and it leaves those distorted subtors. What am I talking about? Let me show you for those that are not familiar. Where are we? Here we go. Thank you, John. These subtors here are in place. Okay? The subtors on this one, unfortunately, I've got this red line, but they're kind of in place. So these don't move around here. They stay where they are, and they move the material around them. That's what's going on. They move the material around them. What I believe is that they're neutral, so the way they interact is by manipulating the electrons in the matter, and the electrons in the matter move, and they move in such a way that the metal is fluidized, and the metal ions are then moved along with the electrons, and so it manipulates the matter, but the actual neutral structure isn't doing any moving itself. Camera, okay. Do you see the Earth axis angle in the geometry? I've never really thought about that, but it might be something to look at. Paul SG Tree says, question, do you have a plan view drawing of the Great Pyramid with the sacred geometry and subtours, etc., in relation to the sarcophagus? I kind of have done, but I did it with a previous presentation, and it was with the less good model. So let me find it here. It was this one here. It's not really. I have this in 3D, so what I need to do for the next part of the project is to build out the other parts of the geometry in 3D that are relevant to me. So I think that's the best I can do for you right now. So there is the sarcophagus. You can see that the line cuts through where the damage to the sarcophagus starts and roughly where the alpha is on the backside. Okay. Liam Weaver says, question, why don't you make your model dynamic? Well, I did make it dynamic as a first run to give people an idea. And I did move the tours, but only so people can see the flow. Really, the tours need to stay in place and the flow needs to happen. Okay. And that is the flow of other matter, which isn't what the tours are made of. Okay. It's a bit weird. And I did that in the number 5 stream for Evo Labs. So if you go to Evo Labs, open call 5, I showed the 3D geometry in flow there. Definitely, Corky. Ether is back. I don't think it ever left. We left it. Make Ether great again. I like it. Only works if you spell it correctly. Okay, so I just want to go through the main points. I want to thank again Stephen Sipes. So this was me after we got the thing in position up there on this thing suspended from the roof. That was a bit scary doing that, and also literally like putting a needle into a specific place in a very, very large haystack. This is the beautiful Kelowna. Here is the pyramid. We won't go through that again. This is Stephen himself talking about the pyramid and what inspired him to build it and so forth. And this is some of the extremely fine wine. So if you do go and see the experiment, which I recommend, and like I say, there will be more experiments later in the year. I do like the fact that he has a yin yang on his shirt, which of course the structure is, and I have a t-shirt that actually Carmen Miller gave me when I was with her, which is of Tesla's patent, which is quite apropos. And Paul's got a mushroom on there. He has a wonderful mushroom farm producing things like lion's mane in organics production. So we already know from testing that the red granite is twice the activity of the background there, but I would like to see if we can get the specific granite I referred to earlier for our experiments. It would make it the most authentic to something that could be produced in Egypt. These are the kind of views you get in this very dry environment.
Hi, my name's
That's
Bob
the
Greenyer.
pyramid itself. So the key point is that at the full scale, the center of the Grand Gallery is 7 meters to the east on the north side, and this wall on the right here of this photo of the sarcophagus that I took in the King's Chamber is here. It's exactly on the center line of this phenomenally large structure in Cairo. The alpha here, I believe, is the point at where matter is reborn, and the damage to the sarcophagus and the point of matter at which it's reborn are effectively at the part of this, which we've defined from very many different independent experiments, is where we start to have a kind of curve of the level of disruption to matter. And we can see here that on the drawing, which is very reflective of what you actually see, it's precisely at this point. So I believe the magnetohydrodynamics and the flux of chi causes the disruption, and even the wave-like disruption, because we've seen this in experiments of Benjamin Huang and of Griffin Brock in analysis of their data. I believe this is because of the flux of chi is so intense that it's disrupting probably, most likely, the silicon dioxide in here. Thank you, Matthew Reynolds, for your £5 donation. That's very kind of you. And the second boom of the night, so the first boom of the night was the double whammy here of the preciseness that is encoded into the sarcophagus. The second one was that we are not looking at this position in the magnetohydrodynamics because it goes in itself at the phi ratio. So we've got the cone reduces at the phi ratio. The ratio between I think this and the center to this point and this to this point is the phi ratio. The top of the apple to the disruption zone, the top of the apple to the center of the vortex and the center of the vortex to the disruption zone is the phi ratio. And that's the same in every case at all fractal levels. So this has got the phi ratio embedded in it. It's totally replete with the phi ratio. And so it doesn't surprise me that Nikola Tesla, when he was trying to promote the weapon to end all wars, would have a phi tie on, and he would have exactly the structure necessary to do the job in his background in the flower pot. Okay, so what this means is that exactly and precisely the Egyptians got this keyway inserted at the right place for the electrodynamics. In doing calculation, we established that the 3 films is about all you can fit
it
into
turns out, based on the 7.51% scale
and
pyramid,
thank you very much to Paul Harris.
From the center line, it is 70.8 centimeters to the inside of the sarcophagus volume, and from the base, it's 324 centimeters to the inside of the sarcophagus volume. So we have this little thing that my colleague Paul has jerry-rigged up here, and we've got some Ilford HP5 plus 400 and some matching green tape, and we've arranged them in an XYZ wheel within wheel within wheel orthogonal axes, and they will effectively, that basically there, what you're seeing there with that kind of rough height there is almost exactly the scaled internal volume of the sarcophagus with respect to the Summerhill Pyramid Winery's pyramid.
And that was calculated accurately, and it was placed in position for the experiment. The first experiment, which may or may not be a null control, or it could actually show that the pyramid as it is, where it's situated, with its orientation, is itself already active. So, if there are no other questions, and even if there are, because it's time for my bedtime, I will say thank you very much. This was Pyramid Control. My name's Bob Greenyer, and I'm a volunteer with the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project.